Thank you very much. And as I said to my colleague there, how do we follow those extraordinary talks we've just heard and testimonies we've just heard from Wendy and from Paddy? What occurs to me, though, is that, one of the things that Paddy raised there is how do you communicate, how do you get that message across? And I guess what we're talking about today is one potential way. Essentially it's about giving a voice or empowering people to tell their own stories through video. We live in a digital visual age, when people consume information, when the knowledge they know is largely informed by what they see. And video and the digital realm provide a possible means of getting that message across. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk about, with my colleague Dr. Conn Holohan, some examples of participative video in practice, look at some historical examples. Before I'm going to hand over to Conn to talk about a specific project which he led within the Houston School of Film and Digital Media, where we're both based, called the Home Project, and some of the learnings, if you like, from that experience and an example of some work from it. And at the end there, I'm going to return to just kind of summarize some of the potential areas where we might look to participative video as potentially offering possibilities. So the term participatory video is relatively new, but the idea that it comes from has a long history. At its core, the concept involves entrusting a camera to people's hands to allow them to describe their lives and concerns on their own. As I said at the top, to allow people to tell their own stories, to empower people to tell their own stories and to communicate their own perspectives on experiences. We can trace its origins, though it wasn't called necessarily participative film. Its origins we can date right back to the early 20th century, to the work of the Soviet filmmaker Zidi Vertov, a seminal figure, particularly in the documentary and documentary film practice. Vertov was a strong believer that the camera could revolutionize the way we see the world. And here, as he says, I am kino eye, I am mechanical eye, I am machine, show you the world as only I can see it. He had an enthusiasm, indeed an obsession with what he felt the camera could do. This led to him setting up the kino eye movement. The movement itself was inspired by what was going on already within the worker correspondence movement in the Soviet Union in the 1920s. And this is a movement that urged readers to participate in the production of newspapers by sending in their own letters that would then be published as newspaper commentary on events. And he took that idea and developed and encouraged cinema worker correspondent groups to be set up that would empower people, again, from their communities across Russia, the Soviet Union as it then was, to record news and events, and also to be involved in the distribution of those events that they recorded. It was centrally concerned at raising social consciousness and social awareness through filmmaking. He, as he declared himself, we engage directly in the study of the phenomena of life that surround us. We hold the ability to show and elucidate life as it is considerably higher than the occasionally diverting doll games that people call theatre, cinema, etc. He was a huge critic of fiction film of any type. He saw as lies, as obfuscation, and for him, the key role of film was to reveal the truth, whatever the issue is, to get to the core of that truth and to communicate that truth. In that process, they were concerned with foregrounding the voice of the people's voice and the people's perspective as part of a larger movement to bring social change. Now, this bottom-up approach to filmmaking effectively came to an end within the Soviet Union with the arrival of Stalin in particular and the measures that he implemented. But the concept, the idea that was behind it, resonated with film movements that would emerge subsequently. Several decades later, a similar movement was launched in Canada in 1967, Challenge for Change, or Société Nouvelle program. This was a participatory film and video project that was created by the National Film Board of Canada in 1967 and would remain active until 1980. The impetus for this, again, was the belief that film and video were useful tools for initiating social change and addressing social issues, including poverty and marginalization. One of the key elements that facilitated this was the emergence of video in the 1950s as a viable format for documentary production, significantly less expensive, more portable, paving the way for the emergence of participatory film projects, not just in Canada, but across North America. A key film in this respect is the Challenge for Change program's VTR Saint-Jacques from 1969, directed by Bonnie Sher-Klein, although supervise might be a better term to describe her role, because effectively what she was doing was trying to empower this community again to tell its own story. A community in an economically disadvantaged neighbourhood of Montreal, Canada, whose citizens committee were committed to reducing poverty and enhancing social change. And what they did was they brought video production equipment to this community and to its representative committee and explored ways in which they could allow them to acquire the skills to effectively tell their own story and to communicate their own kind of perspectives. It starts with the question, and I'll show you a short clip from it in a moment, what could happen if people had the technology of communication in their own hands? And that was a kind of guiding force behind the movement as a whole. As Associate Director Dorothy Henu and Klein put it, the videotape recording project in Saint-Jacques is an attempt to extend to its logical conclusion the conviction that people should participate in shaping their own lives, which means, among other things, directing and manipulating the tools of modern communication necessary to gaining and exercising that participation. So I have a short clip I'm now going to play from this.
In the Saint-Jacques district in Montreal, people live out their days without the power to change the conditions of their lives. To obtain a voice in their own affairs, several people from the district got together with the help of a community organizer. They formed the Saint-Jacques Citizens Committee, in which workers and unemployed, students, housewives, and welfare recipients now participate. Their first action, after petitioning in vain to the authorities for better health care, was to establish their own medical clinic, administered by the Citizens Committee. To inform the people in Saint-Jacques about their clinic and to involve them in the future of the committee, the citizens felt the need for better communication. But the established media are not accessible to ordinary people, especially the poor. We, therefore, asked ourselves this question: what could happen if the people had the technology of communications in their own hands?
Bon, écoute, ça, on s'aperçoit quand on attend quelques minutes puis ça ne devient pas blanc quand on a oublié d'enlever ça. On l'enlève. Et quand tu appuies avec là, oui, il y a une petite lumière rouge qui commence à l'intérieur et tu vois que tu es en train de filmer. Mais c'est peut-être pas encore chauffé, ça prend une minute pour chauffer. Oui, j'ai vu des lumières. Alors ici c'est la lumière, c'est tout à fait noir là, c'est à 2 que c'est le plus clair. Puis on a rarement des circonstances où il fait assez clair.
We'll stop it there, but you can find that online. I'm just conscious of time here, so. Drawing inspiration from movements like the Kino-I movement, the VTR Saint-Jacques demonstrates a way in which participatory filmmaker can be used to reach out to people and develop what W.L. Bennett has called human context, in the sense of engaging people and communicating with one another to share their experiences. The ideal of Challenge for Change continues to thrive within Canada, and it's evident, particularly in the work of contemporary filmmaker and documentarian Katrin Zizek. What makes her work distinct as a contemporary example of this practice is that she's updating, drawing on the kind of philosophical background and perspective associated with Challenge for Change, but now updating it with the advent of new digital technologies. A relevant initiative was her involvement in the Filmmaker in Residence initiative sponsored by the National Film Board of Canada, promoted as the world's first documentary experience that was totally online. Its project broke ground with its production practices, storytelling and distribution strategy. Over a period of 5 years, Zizek collaborated with doctors, nurses, patients and researchers of Toronto's inner city St. Michael's Hospital to create Filmmaker in Residence. And this was one of the stories that she told, Street Health Stories. So I'm going to hand over at this point to Dr. Conn, who's going to talk about a specific project that he worked on in Houston, which is also dealing with this theme of homelessness.
Okay, thanks, Sean. I'll try and do this as briefly as possible. Adele mentioned the idea of expertise through experience. I don't know about the expertise part, but any knowledge I have in this area has come through experience because I'm not a filmmaker, I'm not an expert in participatory video practice. This project, the Home Project, emerged from my own interest in cinematic space and place, which is something I'm interested in, how space and place and experiences of space and place are produced on film. Because film, for me, produces very powerful experiences and images of belonging. But it's an experience of belonging that excludes many perspectives. And so really my motivation putting this project together was just a very simple idea of what if we put cameras in people's hands and enabled them to explore their own experience of belonging through cameras. So all I want to do is briefly outline I'd love to show a clip, I don't know if we're going to have time though, outline the structure of the program and just talk in particular about some of the challenges. So the project occurred in the summer of 2015, and I was working with basically 3 community organisations: Cope Galway, Youth Advocate Programs Ireland, who deal with young people at risk, and the Oranmore Sustainable Communities Group. And so basically over a period of time, we sort of collectively kind of came to devise the structure for the project. As I said, this project was something that had been kind of brewing in my head for a number of years, just coming out of my own research interests. And eventually, what happened was I just put in a funding bid for the Irish Research Council, much to my surprise. They gave me the money, and I thought, oh, Jesus, I better do something now. In a way, I think that's quite a valuable way to do things, because it forces you to actually just put this thing into practice. So the structure of the project was, basically we had 3 filmmaking workshops with as I said, I'm not a filmmaker, so somebody came in who had a lot of experience doing participatory filmmaking work. She led these workshops, and in those workshops we did 2 things. One, we gave people basic training in filmmaking, and the other thing, we started to explore ideas about space, home, belonging. And these were really powerful and really, and also then they split into groups within these workshops. We brought in 2 additional filmmakers, and they worked with these filmmakers to start to generate ideas about the project. Then they did 2 weeks filming and 3 weeks editing. And at the end of that, they produced 3 separate films. What I would, I think, like to do now is just show you a quick clip if I can. Sorry, I've completely forgotten to use. Sorry, don't look at that. Oh yeah, sorry, got it. Okay, so this is, we produced a website, and this is one of the videos. So this is Teresa, who is talking about her experience as she was adopted and her experience in her adopted family, and how she found out something about her biological parents, her biological mother, and her own sort of origins, which actually came out in the filmmaking process, which no one knew this, no one else in the room had heard this story before.
Years, because that was my belief.
Sorry, I should say she's talking here about how her adoptive family said that her biological parents didn't want to meet her, so not to go and look for them.
Before I do anything, they did take me in. They brought me up. Doesn't matter what kind of life I had, they did take me in. They gave me some place to sleep on the roof and that. Now, they weren't bad to me, but they were much better to my sister than they were to me, my adopted sister. Before I started being homeless, when I came to the Golden Key, I was the shyest person going. I'd barely speak to one. I was that shy. And what got me out of the shyness was really and truly when I got homeless, more or less. Joined everything, did everything that everyone did. I was drinking, I was drinking, I was on drugs as well, to be quite honest. Not heavy drugs, but I was. And it was all doing my head up. Eventually I tried to kill myself twice. I was in the psychiatric twice, all over it. I was bit up another time. I do feel sorry for people that are homeless, but it's nice when they do get a place. They should appreciate it a bit better, What I did do when I got this place, well, before I got this place, I went for my birth cert, find out who I was. So I got my birth cert, and on the birth cert was, I was called Teresa Lynch through marriage, and when I was single I was called Teresa Conn, but my real name is Mary Teresa George. When I saw that on my birth cert, including it was the same name as my birth mother had, I knew when she put that down as her name to me, and I was 5 years when I was adopted. She didn't sign me up for 5 years. I knew she wanted me to find her. So then, my mother was...
Sorry, I'll just leave it there. So that story about her name had never... Sorry, I'm just finished now. Had never...
Faut être obligé de l'ajuster. Ça, c'est...
Lecture in digital media, you would never guess. Okay. So if I could just quickly talk about some of the challenges, which is just firstly some of the feedback. One of the main challenges in this is the relationship between process and product. What is the purpose of this? Okay, and that there's a tension in that, and a lot of that tension has got to do with your relationship to the community partners. What do they want out of it? Because often a community organisation will come to you and go, "Great, you're going to make a promotional video for us," and so their interest, their motivations, my motivations, and the participants' motivations can be very different. And a part of the thing that I had to do was let go of my motivations, in a sense, and let them take over. In one of the videos in particular, that didn't go so well, in that really the aim of the group was really they wanted the promotional video type thing. It brought in a lot of tension. They produced a film that's like the most technically expert of them all, but it kind of looks like a nationwide video. For me, it kind of lost what it was meant to be. But equally, part of letting go your own motivation is you have to let them do the thing that they want to do. Some of the feedback was, again, about the process. This is from COPE clients. It gave them the opportunity to tell their own stories. It gave them something to do over the summer, and also the idea of the product, the completed film, as a showcase. This is an interesting one, and I think it's kind of double-edged in some way, that the participants felt a sense of pride and a sense of gratitude to being part of something within the university. And on one side, I think that's great. On the other side, the idea of gratitude in some ways makes me feel uncomfortable. What you would like is them to feel a sense of entitlement to be part of this. And just finally, the challenges. Those challenges about participation and control are key. And getting people involved and enabling them to have creative control, because I think that's the center of something like this. And the other challenges have got to do with what happens next. And this is where this project, I feel, has fallen down a little bit because of the way it was conceived. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. And unfortunately, for better or worse, the currencies of academia are funding and publications. Because of the way it was conceived of this, there was no publication aim at the start of it, and the funding ran out. So just like a very simple thing, the website, the hosting platform for the videos, I couldn't afford to pay it anymore because the funding was gone, so 2 of the videos aren't accessible now. So I think these, what I would say is, the importance is designing those ideas into the project in the first place, but crucially, it's about control and handing it over. So that's it. That's all I have to say.